And if you want to get into a little more of a comfortable spot, you can even lay down, whatever feels good to you to receive this in a good way. And I'll open the story the way that Clarissa Pinkola Estes opens it as well, because I think it's such a genius way to open a story, a very old traditional way of bringing us into the story. It goes, once there was, and once there was not, a young girl named Vasalisa, who lived at the edge of a forest with her mother and her father. And they had a comfortable life together, a sweet life. They had their chickens, their goats, their sprawling vegetable garden. It was an easy life, a familiar life, and they loved it together. Until one dark and rainy, cold season, Vasalisa's mother became suddenly and gravely ill. And one evening she was lying in her bed and she could barely move. Her face was white. And she called her daughter to her. She said, "Oh, my beloved, dear daughter, come stand beside me. I want you to have this doll." And she hands Vasalisa this tiny doll who was dressed exactly the same as Vasalisa, wearing the same color skirt, the same color boots, the same embroidered vest. And her mother said, "Whenever you feel lost or don't know which way to go, just reach for this doll in your pocket and it will tell you what you need to know. This is my gift to you, my blessing on you, my dearest beloved daughter." And with that, like a flock of birds flying into the sky at dusk, her last breath left her body and she died. Vasalisa and her father mourned for a very, very long time. But then, like the new green life returning to a forest after it's been decimated by a wildfire, the life force rose in Vasalisa's father once again, and he remarried, this time to a widow who had 2 daughters of her own. And in polite company, in social settings, the stepmother and stepsisters were, yes, very polite, very agreeable, smiling at all the right times, saying all the right things, and fooled even Vasalisa's father. But at home, amongst themselves, things were much different. They were vicious. They were, as Clarissa Pinkola Estes says, like rats in the offal pile at night. There was something of the rodent to them. And they were especially vicious to Vasalisa. They hated her. They were so jealous of her. She was so beautiful, glowing, radiant, so effortlessly kind and sweet, everything that they were not and probably could never be. They hated her so much, they would send her outside to do chores that no young girl should have to do, chopping firewood all morning by herself, going into the forest when it was raining and snowing to gather roots and herbs, working the vegetable garden by herself all afternoon in the hot sun. They were hoping by doing these things that she would also become ravaged and hunched and tensed and mean like them because of being exposed to the elements all day and the hard work. But every evening she'd come back into the house and she'd be even more glowing, even more healthy, even more radiant and lovely. It drove them crazy. They were so frustrated by this. Till one afternoon, when Vasalisa was out milking the goats and tending to the chickens, they conspired to put all the flame and fire in the house out, so that when she came back, they would have to send her into the forest to beg a coal from Baba Yaga. And as everyone knows, Baba Yaga eats people. So they would be done with her forever. What a perfect plan, they chuckled and chortled and screeched. And sure enough, when Vasalisa came home that evening, all the fire, all the flame, all the hearth fires were out in the house. Oh, she was so concerned. What's happened? Why is it so dark? What will we have to cook with? How will we stay warm? "Oh, you stupid child," said her stepmother. "Of course the fire has all gone out. Can't you see? Someone is going to have to go into the forest to beg a coal from Baba Yaga, and I can't go. I am too old. And your stepsisters can't go. They are too afraid. So you are going to have to go. Vasalisa said, okay, all right, yes, I'll do that. I'll do that. She left the house and walked into the night. She walked into the forest, and it was raining and it was cold, and she had no idea where the Baba Yaga's hut lived. But every time she came to a fork in the path, she just reached into her pocket and asked the doll which way to go, and the doll always told her. So she went on like this for hours and hours. Every time she came to a fork in the path, the doll would tell her which was the right way to go. And the rain soaked her cloak, and the branches whacked her in the face, and she stepped in mud up to her shins, but she kept going. Hours and hours more, until suddenly a man on a white horse, dressed in all white, galloped past her on the path, and the sky began to lighten. She walked and walked a little bit more, and suddenly a man in all red on an all red horse cantered by her on the path, and the sun rose. She walked and walked and walked some more. It seemed like she walked all day long, until far off in the distance, through the trees, through the branches, down the trail, she saw a strange looking little hut. And as she saw it, a man in all black on an all black horse trotted past her and right into the front door of the hut. Suddenly, just like that, night fell, and it was completely dark. Vasalisa walked closer and closer to the hut in the clearing, and as she did, the fence around the hut began to glow with an eerie light. And as she got even closer, she saw that the light was coming from dozens of skulls perched on top of fence posts made of human bones. And inside each skull, there was a little flame, so that the skulls glowed out their eye holes, their nose holes, the mouth holes, the ear holes, creating such a strange ambiance in that clearing. Now, before I go any further, I should tell you a bit about the Baba Yaga, in case you haven't met her yourself. So the Baba Yaga can embody as a very, very fearsome being. She flies around in a cauldron shaped like a mortar, and she rows it with a giant pestle. And the whole time as she's flying around in this mortar, she sweeps the tracks of where she's been with a broom whose bristles are made from the hair of somebody long dead. Her nose is so long and curved that it curls down like this, and her chin is so long that it curves up like this, and they meet in the middle. And through them, you can see the gleam of her teeth, which are all made of iron. She has a little white goatee and long greasy hair, and her arms and hands and wrists are covered in warts from her dealings with toads. And her fingernails are so long and ridged and brown and curled over that she can't even make a fist. And her house is even stranger. Her house is a ramshackle hut perched on top of two giant yellow scaly chicken legs. And it walks around and it runs around as much as it pleases wherever it wants to go. And sometimes it twirls around and around and around like a dancer. Sometimes it faces away from the forest and its front door points to the land of the dead. But that's another story for another time. As Vasalisa came upon this very, very strange hut, it slowly lowered itself down so she could approach the front door. And as she walked up closer to the door, she saw that the bolts on the shutters and the doors and the windows were all made of human fingers and toes, and that the lock on the door was a snout full of pointed teeth. Vasalisa reached for the doll in her pocket and asked, "Are you sure this is the house that we're supposed to find?" And the doll said, "Yes, yes, this is the house we seek." So Vasilisa gathered her courage and she walks up to the door. She's raising her hand back to knock when suddenly the Baba Yaga herself swoops down in her mortar and hovers right in front of Vasilisa.
"What do you want, little girl?" said the Baba Yaga.
Oh, grandmother, said Vasilisa. I've come to ask you for fire. All the flame and fire has gone out in our house. We have nothing to cook with. My family will be cold. My people will die. Please, I've come to ask you for fire.
"Oh, you silly girl," said the Baba Yaga. "I imagine it was you who let the fire go out. Well, that was a silly thing to do. And what makes you think I should give you the flame?"
Vasilisa reached again for the doll in her pocket and felt what it said. And so she said to the Baba Yaga, because I ask.
The Baba Yaga said, "You're very lucky. That's the right answer."
Vasilisa felt very relieved about that.
"But," said the Baba Yaga, "before I will even consider giving you the flame, you will have to do work for me. And if you can complete these tasks, I might do this thing for you. If not," then her eyes began to glow like red hot coals, "if not, you will die."
Whew. Vasilisa felt very nervous about this, but she followed the Baba Yaga into her hut, where the Baba Yaga proceeded to lumber over to her bed and slam herself down into it. And when she's lying in her bed, her body takes up the entire length of the cabin. And from there, she ordered Vasilisa to bring her all the food that was cooking in the oven. Vasilisa went and did this, and it took her a few trips. There was enough food in the oven for 10 people. And Baba Yaga ate it all. She ate and ate and ate and ate until finally it was gone, all except a tiny thimble of soup and a tiny crust of bread she left for Vasilisa. Oh, the Baba Yaga belched, and as she wiped her lips, she said to Vasilisa, "Now, tomorrow, you will wash my clothes, clean the cabin, sweep the garden, tend the yard, and cook my meal." Vasilisa thought, okay, I can do this. This is very doable.
"And," the Baba Yaga said, "there's a giant pile of corn in the shed over there, and you will separate all the mildewed corn from the good corn. And if I return home and see that you've done this, maybe I will give you the fire. But if you fail to do these things, you will be my feast."
And with that, she flew into the air with her nose as the windsock and her hair as the sail, leaving Vasilisa by herself. Oh my goodness, how am I going to do these things? Vasilisa asked the doll. It's impossible. There's just too much. Shh, shh, said the doll. Don't worry. All will be well. Just eat a little and drink a little and then go to sleep. So Vasilisa ate a little and drank a little and gave a little to the doll to eat and drink. And then she went to sleep. And when she woke up in the morning, everything had been done. Even the mildewed corn separated from the good corn. The only thing left for her to do was cook the meal. She was so amazed and relieved. And when the Baba Yaga got home that evening, she looked around and saw that indeed all the work had been done. The Baba Yaga was pleased, and she was displeased because she could find nothing wrong at all.
"Oh, you are a very lucky girl," she said to Vasilisa. "You have done everything."
And so she began to eat and eat and eat the meal. She ate for hours and hours and hours. And then she called her servants to come grind the corn that had been sorted. 3 pairs of hands appeared out of nowhere and began to grind the corn, and the golden chaff flew through the house. And when it was done, Baba Yaga clapped her hands again, and the pairs of hands disappeared.
She said, "Now tomorrow, You will do the same tasks for me. You will wash my clothes. You will sweep the yard. You will clean the house and cook the meal.
Vasilisa thought, oh, yes, I can do these things. I can do these things.
And, Baba Yaga said, see that giant pile of dirt out in the garden? That pile is full of millions of poppy seeds. You will sort all the poppy seeds from the dirt and make 2 piles of poppy seeds and dirt. And if you fail to do this by the time I come back tomorrow, you will be my dinner. And again, she flew off into the night.
Oh, Vasilisa said, this is impossible. Nobody can do this. I don't know what I'm going to do. And again, the little doll said, don't worry, just go to sleep and all will be well. So Vasilisa went to sleep. And sure enough, in the morning, everything was done again. And the entire pile of dirt had been sorted into a gleaming pile of poppy seeds and the pile of dirt. She was so amazed, so grateful for the doll's work. And by the time the Baba Yaga got home that evening, she saw again that yes, everything had been done. My, said the Baba Yaga. This is quite impressive. Oh, well, you are lucky yet again. And the Baba Yaga sat and ate and ate and ate her meal. And Vasalisa stood nearby watching.
What are you looking at?
The Baba Yaga demanded. Oh, grandmother, I was just wondering if I could ask you a few questions, said Vasalisa.
Yes, ask. But remember, too much knowledge can make one old too soon, said the Baba Yaga.
So Vasalisa asked about the man in all white on the white horse.
Ah, said the Baba Yaga, that first is my day.
So Vasalisa asked about the man in all red on the red horse.
Ah, yes, said Baba Yaga, that one is my rising sun.
And Vasalisa asked about the man in all black on the black horse.
Ah, yes, said Baba Yaga, that one is the third, and he is my night.
And Vasalisa said, oh, yes, I see.
Oh, come now, said Baba Yaga. Don't you want to ask any more questions?
And Vasalisa was about to ask about the servants who appeared out of nowhere, the hands that appeared to grind the corn and press the oil from the poppy seeds. And the doll began jumping up and down in her pocket. So she stopped herself and said, oh no, grandmother, no. As you say yourself, too much knowledge can make one old too soon.
Oh, said the Baba Yaga, you are wise beyond your years, daughter. How did you come to be this way?
By the blessing of my mother, said Vasalisa.
Blessing? We need no blessings in this house. You best be on your way, daughter. Go now.
And she began to shoo Vasalisa out of the house. She stopped on the porch and grabbed one of the skulls with the flame coming out of its eyes and nose and ears and mouth holes and jammed it on a stick, handed it to Vasalisa and said, here's your fire. Now take this and go. Don't say another word. Be gone. And Vasalisa was about to say thank you, but the doll started jumping up and down in her pocket again. So instead, she took the skull on the stick and began running through the forest, running and running in the darkness. And she had no idea how to get back to the cabin where her stepmother and stepsisters were. But again, the doll told her where to go at every fork in the road. She ran and ran and ran, holding the skull on the stick. And after a while, it began to feel very, very heavy. And the skull, glowing with the flame inside of it, began to look very strange and eerie indeed. And Vasilisa thought it might be best to just throw it away into the bushes. But the skull began to speak to her and said, calm yourself, child, and just keep going. So Vasilisa listened and kept going, holding the skull on the stick, running back towards the cabin where her stepmother and stepsisters were, listening to the doll's directions of where to go. And the stepmother and stepsisters were back at the cabin, and They had long given up on Vasilisa. They assumed she had been eaten by wild animals in the forest and good riddance. But as they looked out the window, they saw a strange light bobbing and dancing towards them in the darkness. And as they peered out, they couldn't tell what on earth it was they were seeing. And Vasilisa ran closer and closer and closer. And the stepmother and stepsisters stepped out onto the porch to see if they could get a better look. And as they gazed into the forest, they saw that it was Vasilisa running towards them with this strange lantern. And they ran down to meet her and greet her and said, "Oh, Vasilisa, we're so happy you're back. Every time we tried to light a fire, it would just go out. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this fire back to us." And they all went into the house, Vasilisa carrying the skull on the stick with the fire inside it. She felt so triumphant. She felt so good about herself. She had done this thing that no one else could do. She had survived this dangerous journey and brought fire back to her people. And all night long, the skull with the fiery eyes watched every move of the stepmother and stepsisters. And by the morning, it had burnt all three of them to cinders. So there's our story.